welcome. Today, we welcome Eureka to the operating table, and rather than opening him up literally, we're here to discuss his work, his history, and his art practice. Eureka's work is part of the Men Still Standing show here at XYZ Photo Gallery, and it is an event within the Midsummer Festival. Now, to start off with, in the art world, biography and identity are particularly important. Where are you from?
Born in Wangaratta, a few years in a tiny little town called Colbinaban, and then moved to Melbourne. So the deep northern suburbs of Melbourne.
Mm-hmm. So what was your childhood like?
Interesting. Dad was the headmaster at the local school in Colbinaban, and so it was a tiny little community where everybody knew each other. There were some big secrets that were kept though, and it has that gothic underlay of all country towns where there's a strict hierarchy of a pecking order and whatever. So not exactly the necessarily the most creative or gay friendly environment to grow up in. But I was only there until 7. Yeah.
Tell us about your first encounter with photography as a form, as a thing.
This is so weird, but in the 2000s, when I sort of fell out of the closet, came out as a gay man, one of the things that helped me come out of the closet was the work of Brenton Parry, who happens to be one of the other artists on show. And he had a blog called Aussielicious. And I was looking at this blog and I thought, oh, artists can take pictures of naked men. Sounds like a good idea. And and his photography, which is so clever and so warm and engaging, and also features men in the great outdoors, made me think about what I could do. So that was a key part of it.
Do you remember particular moments and particular artworks in your growing up in your formative years that were influential on how you perceived the world and what came after in terms of your own practice?
Well, I was an altar boy outside Thomas More's Hadfield, and I remember the sort of live theatre that I was exposed to. For example, I used to be an altar server at Requiem Masses, and so you would have these gold and black vestments, you'd have the incense going, there'd be the track to the dead when the abode of this earthly existence collapses, So it was this wonderful Gothic extravaganza, and when you're in the deep north of Melbourne, you need something with a bit of colour and history and light about it when you're stuck in the suburbs. So I think that has really shaped my eye ever since, that early exposure.
So there's an interesting thing that's happened in art between Catholicism and all of its rituals and colour, and men in dresses who don't like men in dresses. That has inspired a lot of artists. I think of Andy Warhol, Robert Mapplethorpe. Mapplethorpe particularly used a lot of iconography from the Catholic Church, and he once said that his photographs were organised like altars.
Wow. Yes, I can understand that. Yeah, I certainly would be in that category, although interestingly enough, half my practice is photography and the other half is writing, drawing, a whole lot of other things. And a lot of my practice has been inspired by gay men that were artists in the Renaissance time. So the king hitters of Catholic art are, like Michelangelo, Greco, Caravaggio, who was charged with sodomy. Pretty much clear on the historical record that the major image makers for the Catholic Church were gay men. What we would now call gay men. There was no such thing at that time. And so that's the tradition that I identify with, and I spent a lot of time in Europe looking at those works.
There's a very interesting dynamic that happens, which is within the Catholic Church, which is that if you're dedicated to God and you feel homosexual tendencies, then one tends to then become more godlike, want God to rescue you from this, and thus the priesthood, with its lack of marriage, along with its boys' club, along with the idea that you're serving God, therefore God will help you out of this, is very appealing.
Yes, and I was, looked at becoming a Franciscan monk, and it's a big part of a Catholic childhood that you identify with these role models. But, living in same-sex communities, when you think about it, that's what a monastery is.
Mm-hmm.
These are people who've chosen to live with their own gender.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, but they're not gay. No,
Mm-hmm.
couldn't possibly be. Yeah. And there's that. And look, that's one of the tensions I explore in my work all the time, because I deliberately juxtapose the naked male figure with religious iconography.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Now, after you left high school, what did you go on to study?
Oh, look, I'm a bit of a mongrel, really. I did 2 years of arts, which I later finished off at Melbourne Uni, specialising in psychology and throwing in a bit of anthropology and English literature.
Mm-hmm.
And then I did a social work degree at Melbourne University. And then later on, in order to feed the family and be a credible manager, I did an MBA.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Now, I'm curious. I have a theory that most artists, whatever they first study, that becomes the matrix by which their artwork is thought through and is constructed almost. Do you think that the psychology and social work has influenced how you photograph and why you photograph?
particularly I think heaps. It's made a major, like social work, for example. I'm doing a project in Shepparton at the moment, where I'm working with gay people and photographing them, telling their stories in sight. And that's a community development project which comes straight out of my social work practice.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm really interested in, and I was involved in some of the very first exhibitions of gay material in the western suburbs. And I've always been involved intuitively in community development.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a major influence. The other thing is, it requires a lot of skill to work with a model. You're suddenly confronted with 1, 2, 3 or 4 naked people,
Mm-hmm.
and you have to put them at ease and you have to get the best out of them. And those skills are highly related to the sort of counselling sort of area as well. So I find that's a happy crossover of skills.
Mm-hmm. One of the weird things is my first one was theology
and
ministerial
okay.
studies.
Yeah.
So likewise, there's a lot of similarities there because, again, you're taught how to put people at ease.
Yes.
And how to influence. But also I found within your work, you like whole things.
Yeah.
Whole people, not parts of them.
Yes.
Almost like the iconographic sculptures of the Catholic Church.
That's very perceptive of you, because I notice when I look at a lot of contemporary photography, they have these arty shots of, armpits and willies and other body parts, and they're all very abstracted. And I actually don't like that sort of abstracted work. And I think it's, what I try to do is take a photograph that reveals both the body and the soul of the subject.
Mm-hmm.
And if you do too much abstracting and too much dissection, of the form, you miss that. So I think the sexiest part of the body is the face, actually.
Mm-hmm. But I find it interesting with my own work. I have to photograph the whole first. I can't go down to those abstractions until I've definitely got excellent work of the whole.
Yes.
Before I can actually attack parts. This makes me a shocking architecture photographer. Because they love their little details.
Yeah.
Which is quite interesting.
Ross has it's a beautiful abstract work.
Oh, yes.
As we come in on the corridor here, it's really worth seeing. He's really developed a sort of abstract view of the male nude, which I admire, but which I'm not remotely similar to. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, it's like you can admire people who can do the work that you can't do.
Yes.
As opposed to the work that you do.
Mm.
Yeah, understand. Now, I'm curious about, you came to drawing and you came to photography.
Yes.
What was the progression for photography? Who came along? Who are the artists that put you along this trail and this adventure of finding and photographing?
So I suppose I should explain that I like to paint with the camera.
Mm-hmm.
So most of my inspiration comes from art history and the sort of painterly world, and so there haven't been the big, ticket sort of inspirations. There's people like Ross Watson who've appealed to me in terms of their subject matter, who's a contemporary queer painter in Melbourne. But it hasn't been a matter of falling in love with photographers or their view. It's been a matter of learning to use the camera to realise my own vision. Yeah. Is that clear? Does that make sense?
Makes sense.
With the one very notable exception, I just adore Tamara Dean's work, and she's got a show on at the moment that I highly recommend. And the way that she does ensemble work with groups of volunteer actors and models, and the way she uses the natural environment, and she uses medium format cameras, which I would love to do one day. And she's just an icon, and she's also a lovely person who I met recently.
Now let's talk about cameras for a moment.
Oh yes.
How did you tell me about the process of learning the mechanics of photography for you?
This will be a very short story because I'm still learning a lot. I've got a Canon 750 DB, which is I normally have sort of welded to me, but it's a fairly big camera, and most of the time I'm on the automatic settings because I'm focused on, torturing the model to get the best possible image out of them. But I do use a 50 millimeter lens for close-up work where, portraiture mainly. I prefer natural light, but some of these I would think are quite successful using the light in the mid-century modern home that I was staying in. So I've been experimenting more and more with not so much studio lighting, but I would say probably found lighting, which echoes the place that I'm in, Yeah.
It's interesting because a lot, particularly of American photographers, they get to a certain stage where they're self-taught, and then they'll hire assistants who come from the best colleges.
Yes.
Annie Leibovitz is a classic. In the 80s she was doing this, and she would use Australian assistants particularly because she liked their work ethic. Yes. And so they would have the technical skill, and the shots would be very much about their skills as well as her composing.
Yes.
What she brought to it was the composing, and in a lot of cases the assistants brought a lot of the lighting and the technical skills. And I know particularly in the studio of Maplethorpe, his brother Edward, he was the one that went into a photography course.
Yes.
So there's this moment where Edward comes to work at the studio and Robert's work completely metamorphosizes.
Yes.
And that wasn't Robert, that was Edward coming to work with him.
I think we do overemphasize the role of the individual in the production of work. Like, it's pretty much anything that's worth doing, it requires some sort of group effort. For example, Paul, who's here today, was helping me with a fairly complex shot at the convent here in a very, very, very constrained room, where we're jumping up and down models on tables, all sorts of stuff, and really it would have been impossible to get that work without some assistance. So it's a team effort, but you don't see that very often.
So why did you choose the 750D?
I think it was on special, some really highly technical reason. But it's good enough that it makes up for some of my technical inadequacies, and I do drive some photographers wild. Rod said to me one day, "I think you prefer the work blurred," and I think that's sort of true in a way, because I'm after the romance and poetry of photography. I'm not after that sort of really crisp commercial look that has no interest to me. Yeah.
Interesting. Some photographers are completely obsessed with equipment. It's kind of fun to dissect why. What are the themes that you keep coming back to with your work? What are the obsessions?
The metaphor of Eureka as for the idea of freedom, of discovering freedom, and that Australian society is, we need to to take on the message of the Eureka Stockade and to provide a society which is equal and where people's rights are respected. And so the ongoing sort of theme really is this theme of personal and social liberation from the constraints of colonialism and racism and homophobia.
And over the period you've been photographing, has that changed or intensified?
It's just continuous. It's like the base level. I've got work in Ballarat at the moment. opening up the week after George Pell's funeral of a naked man against the Eureka flag, and that's sort of my little protest of, continually, and that, I've been doing that same theme now for about 15 years.
Mm-hmm.
But also do sort of within that, there's a layer of other things. It's probably best described by hashtags on my Instagram account, things like Man of Flowers, So this one here of the model sky is an example of that, where I've been for a long time juxtaposing the traditionally feminine idea of flowers with the male form. And I find that ongoing interest, and I'll probably continue to explore that theme.
Mm-hmm. So I'm understanding that your projects kind of flow. It's not like you stop one and then you go, time for a new idea. Okay, this is the idea.
Yeah.
Let's start again and make a new body of work. It appears the way you're describing it, it's a continuous stream and you cut sections out to be various exhibitions. Would that be
That's so true. I did used to work for an engineer who I drove crazy, because I'd be running 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 projects at once, get them all home, but he was only interested in one thing at a time. And I have a congenital inability to do one thing at a time. Like I simply can't do that, and I'm way more creative when I'm running multiple projects. But the temptation is to be a dilettante and just do bits of everything and not focus. So I exhibit pretty much every year, which means that I have to get my work focused and get a result as well as a process. So it's a mixture of process and result.
The most difficult thing about an art practice I've found is birth. You put your babies out there into the gallery for people to look at and in the public sphere, and this leaves the work open to interpretation. How do you feel about this? And what is the most confusing response you've had to your work?
I don't mind that other people. I'm used to the fact if you exhibit a lot, which I do, you realise that people put their own interpretations onto the work, and in a way, I'm quite glad if that happens, because once you've produced it and you've got it printed and you've put it up there, it's no longer your own. It's in the public domain, and people are free to put their own projections onto it. And in fact, the more I'm quite pleased when people do that, because it means that I've been able to capture their interest or bring back a memory or stimulate something in the viewer. So it's not a problem. In fact, I'm delighted with it. In terms of bizarre ones, my work constantly gets, like for example, I did a presentation to the Ballarat Trades Hall Council about the Eureka show, and then instead of getting criticism back saying, well, we're basically never going to show a naked figure in Ballarat against the Eureka flag, you're dreaming, I just had sort of radio silence despite many attempts. And so a lot of my work, I get the big radio silence sort of response because, I submit work to a show. I submitted a very challenging piece called the Colbernabin Pieta to the Colbernabin Silo show, and of course that didn't get up. Didn't even get a reply. It's really common for myself as a queer artist that deals with the naked male figure that I get no response rather than, a considered response or even a quirky one. Truly, I'd be happy with anything. Anything is better than the no response, which is unfortunately very common.
Right. Now, so far in your career, what has been the highlights?
So part of my practice is I take pictures in the studio of the model. I take pictures when I'm travelling a lot overseas. I do artist residencies every second year, and I sort of put them together. And so a recent highlight was being in Tunisia, in Tunis, the capital of Tunisia, on an artist residency, and I was only there in an old convent for about 10 days. So I only had a chance to produce, I did no photography work, but I did a lot of drawing of local buildings and stuff, and the convent garden. And towards the end of the practice, the people running it asked me to put on an exhibition with about 4 hours notice. And I went, oh hell. So what we did was peg up all the works in the garden next to the things that I'd actually drawn, which was on a big clothesline, and then we ran a show. We ran a video of my show that I'd done at the convent in 2017, Scalata. And then we had a conversation with the local intelligentsia about the nature of freedom, gay rights in an emerging democracy, gay rights in an Islamic country, censorship on social media. Just the most amazing exchange with these uber intelligent, really interesting people who'd never actually met an openly queer artist in their lives. So that was a moment of coming together across all of our different barriers and different nationalities. And then the Scalata that I referred to was another highlight, which was a major show I did in 2017 with the help of a curator, a theologian, a student from RMIT, absolute team production that took months and, well, probably years of work. And so I'd been in Venice and been living in amongst some of the world's greatest artworks, and I came back really inspired and developed a show called Scalata. I had a fabulous opening night, and my son and his friend made quite a respectable film about it. So I feel like not only was it a great event, but I've got a really good, highly professional record of the event. So that was my coming out, really, I think, in many ways.
You seem to be very attracted to religious buildings.
Yes, I currently have a studio at the Abbotsford Convent. I go on an artist residency, and I'm living in a convent. Hello. And every morning when I was in Venice, I'd get up and talk to the American academics staying there, and they would direct me to the church with the best Tintoretto or whatever. So, and when I was in Seville, I spent months literally sitting inside a church drawing the altarpieces and understanding the architecture, and then turning that into some group shots that I've done since. So
now we come to the final question, which is two parts. What intrigues you, and what artist has recently been intriguing you?
Oh, intrigue is an interesting word.
I liked it over best.
Well, erotic work intrigues me because it's so demanding emotionally and for everybody. You know, we're working at your limits and also respecting those limits, and yet getting an erotic product out of it So that's really challenging. It requires every degree of negotiation and understanding and communication. So. And it's also, and technically it's quite challenging as well. So, both drawing and photography. So that's what's intriguing me at the moment. Of course, there's no obvious market from it, and most of the current galleries would run screaming if I put anything in that line towards them. But even without a market, I'm finding it worthwhile work to do.
There's a great story of Mapplethorpe when he was in New York. One of his hobbies was to go around and show his most extreme work to the most dainty galleries in New York City who told people that they were avant-garde.
Yes.
And so he'd just walk in with like man being fisted with two arms or finger down a penis or just the more extreme of his work for the S&M days and go like, I'd like to have a show here. This is my work. And he said he could just get a buzz out of watching the whole avant-garde collapse right in front of him and not cope, which I found very amusing.
That does sound fun, yeah.
And which photographer or artist recently?
I'm going to have to go back to Tamara Dean. She's really, like each time I look at her work, I find something new. So I've seen the show that's on at Monash at the moment twice. I came back, and the second time it was the colour that got to me. The first time it was the way that she'd used combinations of groups. But she's such a consummate artist photographer, really, who does the most amazing, really intuitive work. But she's also completely the mistress of the technical aspects. Like she's building a tank at the moment, she's built a tank so she can photograph underwater. And so she's technically amazing, she's fearless, she's engaging, and she's living the life of an artist, all those things which, I aspire to be.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Any questions? Well, that lasted a long time.
Can I ask one?
What are you working on at the moment?
Oh, okay.
This year?
Cool. So there's some exciting stuff where I'm rediscovering the sort of country areas where both my mother came from in central Victoria, Shepparton, Nagambie type region, and my father in sort of Ballarat and Gordon area. And so I'm doing challenging projects with both and getting some encouragement from local galleries, which is good. And they're all about the Eureka series for Ballarat, but also for Shepparton, I'm photographing local members of the queer community, mostly naked, and mostly outside your traditional body types. So I got the challenge recently to be more diverse in my subject matter, and somebody who came to the opening of our show here and it gave me that challenge, and I have been seriously pondering about how I can do that and play to my own strengths, and it's that community development approach that I'm doing with the community around sort of Shepparton, Violet Town, all that area. So
all good. Any other questions?
I've got one for Paul while he's here. What's it like being an assistant in a show that in a shoot that I'm?
I don't like being an assistant because I'm not an assistant.
Yes.
So that's challenging for me. But I find you're easy to work with. You're very calm and you're professional, and yeah, you're easy to work with, which is why I say yes.
Yeah. Cool.
I mean, I've worked on shoots which, there were like 5 gay men, and the model would be like a teenage girl who had absolutely a completely different world. She'd never, she wouldn't speak because she was so intimidated. But it's not intimidating. I don't think it's intimidating being at a photo shoot, one of your photo shoots. Everyone, the model feels relaxed. I'm relaxed.
Yeah.
It's
Cool.
not, yeah, it's easy. You said you torture your models before. I don't think you torture your models at all.
He's working on it.
In the sense that, like, I will say to them, I'll take them through how to pose, mainly from life drawing. So I pose my models according to the principles that come from life drawing. So things about symmetry and about sucking the belly in and doing all sorts of stuff. I've got constant stream of instructions. Now, I do believe in politeness, and I do believe in empathy with the model and stuff. So I try to keep myself nice. But in my head, I've got a very rigorous demand of things that I want. Yeah.
I mean, you don't come across as torturous.
Oh, that's good. I try not to be high maintenance, but I can tell you what's going on constantly in my head is, have I got the right shot? Is the angle right? Can the model cope with this instruction?
Photo shoots like that are very stressful.
Yes.
And I wouldn't work with you if you were torturous.
Yeah.
So,
Fair enough.
I've worked as an assistant to some photographers that were so intense that I was actually afraid we wouldn't get the shot. Because one of the assistants' role with one of the photographers I used to work with was to make sure the shot was got. Like say, okay, the light may not be quite right yet, but let's get one in the back.
Yeah.
And then we can rearrange this, and then we can wait for a better light. But let's just get this one in the bag while it's 90%.
Yeah.
Because often the light would change, or the cloud would come over, and that was gone.
yeah.
Yeah.
And the role of an assistant is to save the photographer from embarrassment. And I've heard horror stories, and I've experienced some really bad ones.
I've never had to save you from embarrassment. I think you've saved me from embarrassment. The first time I worked with you, I made a little bit of a blunder, but we won't go into that. But yeah.
All good.
There's another question.
Yeah.
Eureka, just colour. I mean, colour in the background, colouring you. Look.
Yeah.
I mean, colour's a big theme for you.
Absolutely.
Do you want to elaborate a bit about what colour does
Sure.
for you and just shooting?
I absolutely see the world in colour, and I have great difficulty. Every now and then I make myself do a black and white work so I can concentrate on form. But I really do perceive the world from colour, beginning from when I wake up in the morning what I'm going to wear, like right through to the emotional response I get to different colours. Yeah, and part of the reason I enjoy travel is I experience, the most intense reds in Seville in southern Spain, and the beachside colours in Sydney, it's really integral to my vision, and it's quite saturated colour, as you'll see, and there's also a bit of a preference towards, if you just have a quick look there, it's the reds and the oranges and the pinks that I tend to go for, the very warm colours. Yeah.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. It's been a pleasure.
One very quick comment, just to thank Gary and Joey for all the work they've done. I actually got to have a summit because I was in a group show and just contributing my images, whereas trust me, if you've ever put on an exhibition yourself, it is a humongous amount of work. It goes for days, months, nights, sometimes 24/7. And so I really appreciate what you've done and giving a voice to all the queer artists here.
That is part of our mission. I'm still working on March, April show and May, June show at the moment. They aren't confirmed, but September is now confirmed, which is very, very lovely. It's a lot of fun. Thank you very much.